Hello class, today we'll be talking about 10.3 hyperbolas, equations and graphs of hyperbolas and translated hyperbolas. Now, this one won't be as long as the last one because basically you already kind of know how to do certain things with this. So we're just basically going to take what we have and we're going to add on to it a little bit. So a hyperbola is the set of all points on a plane such that the absolute value of the difference of the distance from two fixed points is constant. It says that the two fixed points are called the foci of the hyperbola. Now, the way that I look at hyperbolas is basically going to be two basically parabolas per se going opposite directions. Either they're going up and down or they're going left and right. All right. So let's look at this. Now, the standard forms for hyperbolas, we have x squared over a squared minus. Remember, there's a minus here. Y squared over b squared is equal to 1. Now, the vertices for this one would be what? Plus or minus a, 0. Then the asymptote would be what? Y is equal to plus or minus b over a, x. That'll give you your line, your asymptotes. Then they also give you what? The foci point, which is plus or minus c, 0, where c is equal to a squared plus b squared. Now remember, the other one was a squared minus b squared. Now it's a squared plus b squared. Now it says the transverse axis on x is on the x-axis. All right? So keep that in mind. So we look at this one. This is y squared. Now, if you notice this one, all right, and this one, all right, you got y squared over a squared minus x squared over b squared is equal to 1. Now, the vertices will be 0 plus or minus a. The asymptote would be what? The plus or minus a over b, x. The foci point would be 0 plus or minus c. And it says where c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared. And then the transverse axis is the y-axis. Now, basically, transverse axis is where you have your what? Your vertices. All right? That's where you have your vertices and your what? Foci points. Now, remember, this is, like I said, if you put this in relative mind of how the parabolas look, it's just two parabolas going what? Opposite directions. If you want to look at it like that. So, let's look at our first example. Now, it's not going to be a lot of examples because, like I said, we've been doing the same thing for the different types of conic of equations. So we've been looking at parabolas. We've been looking at what? Ellipses. Now we're going to look at these hyperbolas. Now, let's look at this. So it says graph 25y squared minus 4x squared is equal to what? 100. It says give the equation of the asymptotes and the foci and the domain and range. All right? So first you need to actually put it in a sense that you can actually use it as. So we got what? We got 25y squared minus 4x squared is equal to 100. Now, we're going to do like we did before. We're going to multiply by 1 over 100. Now, if you notice, I've just been dividing by what? The number is equal to. Therefore, I'm going to get what? 25y squared over 100. And you know, I'm going to actually do what? I'm going to reduce these once I do it. I'm going to get 4x squared over 100. Then I'm going to get 1. All right, we already know 100 over 100 is 1. Now, let's reduce this. So this will give me what? Y squared over what? 4. And this is equal, this will be minus x squared over what? 25. And that'll be equal to 1. Now, remember when you're doing these, you got to just keep in mind what you got. Now, when we do this, we got to look at what came first. So we have what? We have y squared over a squared minus x squared over b squared. So my a squared is equal to what? 4. My b squared is equal to 25. Now, remember, you don't have to follow that rule of a is greater than b because it's two different things. All right, when we talk about hyperbolas, it's two different things. Now, make sure if you understand, the other ones was plus, this one is minus. That's how you know the difference between a hyperbola and a what? Ellipse. Now, we need to do what? We need to find what c is. So c is equal to the square root. Now, remember, it's different with this. It's what? 4 plus 25. So c is equal to the square root of what? 29. All right? So now we also have to do what? We have to find our asymptotes. So remember with this one, since we have the y is equal to what we have, we need to go ahead and put a over what? So we will go ahead and put a over b. So it's going to be y is equal to plus or minus 2 over what? Over 5x. So we're going to have our slope is going to be 2 over 5, and it's going to be times x. Remember, you just take the square root of what? 4, and you take the square root of 25. And you get 5. All right? Now we know our foci point. Now, since we have what? We know that our transverse will be the y-axis. So we know that our foci point should be 0, negative the square root of 29. Then we got 0, positive square root of 29. Right? So keep that in mind. Now, what else do we need? Now, what about our vertices? So we go ahead and get our vertices. Now, we know that it's what? The transverse is on the y-axis, so that means basically the major axis, the x-axis, and y-axis. So we have what? We're going to do 0, a, which is 2, and 0, negative 2. So now we got our foci point, we have our asymptotes, and we have our vertices. So now we can kind of look at what the graph looks like. Now for our vertices, we got 0, 2. We got 0, negative 2, like we found. Then we have what? We have our foci point. Now, you have to draw your actual line. Now, if we look at this first line, which goes like this, this is your y is equal to 2/5 x. All right? This other one, which I'm going to put in a different color, this one right here, This is your y is equal to negative 2/5 x. Because it decreases, it's negative. Right? So if you look at what we have 4 different points that's here. That's on the line, right? So we have what? This one's going to be what? 5, 2. Right? This one's going to be what? 5, negative 2. This one's going to be negative 5, negative 2. Let me erase this and make sure I write it. So this is negative 5, negative 2. And this one is negative 5, 2. All right? So just keep in mind that just pretty much you just figure out what's on these lines. All right? Next color. When you graph it. Now, let's look at standard form for hyperbolas with center HK. Now, like before, you're going to have your little situations. So let's look. It says what? It says a hyperbola with center HK and either horizontal or vertical transverse axis satisfies one of the following. So basically, we have what? C squared is equal to a squared plus b squared. So x minus h squared all over a squared minus y minus k squared all over b squared is equal to 1. The transverse axis is what? Horizontal. All right? It's horizontal because what? The x's come first, right? All right? And you got to keep in mind that it's that minus there, all right? So the vertices is h plus a, plus or minus a, and then you keep your k. So it's doing the same rules that the other one's doing. And then the foci point is h plus or minus c, and you keep your k. But your asymptote is y is equal to plus or minus b over a times x minus h plus k. All right? You just got to remember that. So let's look at the center. Let's look at the other one, the transverse of the over the vertical axis. So as you know that this is going to be y minus k squared over a squared. Then we got minus x minus h squared over b squared is equal to c. We see that this is the vertical transverse axis. And then we have h, we keep h, and then we have what? K plus or minus a. Then we have what? H. Then we have k plus or minus c. Then we do what? We have y is equal to a plus or minus a over b times x minus h plus k. So let's do an example of that. Then if you have any questions, make sure you hit me up through Microsoft Teams or you send me an email. So let's look at this. Now, let's look at it. So it says graph y plus 2 squared over 9 minus x plus 3 squared over 4 is equal to 1. Now, we got a squared is equal to, we got 9, and we got b squared is equal to 4. All right? Now, we got c is equal to the square root of 4 plus 9. So c is just equal to the square root of what? 13. Right? Because it's a squared plus b squared, right? All right. So we're going to look at this. So let's go. So we know that we're using the what? The vertical transverse axis. And since we're using the vertical transfer axis, let's go ahead and write what our center is. All right? Let's go ahead and write what our center is. So the center, all right, will be what? It'd be -3, -2. So that's your H and K. So when you go about doing these vertices, all right, we have what? We have -3. Then we have our what? Now let's go, if you go back and look, you're going to have what? K plus or minus A. So it'll be what? -2 plus or minus my A, which is 3. Therefore, you should have what? -3 and what? If I do -2 plus 3, that's going to give me 1. And if I do -2 minus 3, that should give me negative what? 5. So that should be my 2 points that I should get, right? All right. So also, when we do our foci point, so my foci would be my H, which is -3. And then it'll be what? My K, which is -2. And that's plus or minus what? The square root of 13. All right? So when you do this, you just want to make sure you keep your order sufficient. Now we need to find our asymptotes. So the asymptotes, all right, so it's going to be y is equal to plus or minus, then we're going to have what? 3 over 2, all right? Then that's going to be times x plus. Now, let me rewrite this so I can have more room. So asymptotes. So we got y is equal to plus or minus 3 over 2 times x plus 3. Then we have what? Plus k, right? So it's going to be minus 2. All right. So let's look at what we got. So we have, and I'm going to write it in red, we have y is equal to plus or minus 3 halves times x plus 3 minus 2. Now, to graph this, you can either put it in just like this, minus this part, because the plus or minus, what the plus or minus does, it just gives you the direction of the way the line is going. All right? So you can actually put in your graphing calculator and graph the two different ones. So you have y is equal to -3 halves times x plus 3 minus 2. Or you have y is equal to positive 3 halves times x plus 3 minus 2. And they just give you two different directions. So let's look at the actual graph of this. So we have negative 3, 1, as we saw found for the vertice. Then we have what? Negative 3, negative 5, what we found, and we found the center. All right, so we found these points. Now, this one right here would be your y equal to what? Negative 3 halves times x plus 3 minus 2. And this one up here would be your y is equal to 3 halves x plus 3 minus 2. All right? So just keep that in mind. Now, we're looking at the domain. Now, these domains have unions. All right? Because guess what? They don't connect to each other. So when the ranges have unions. So the domains go from what? Negative infinity to positive infinity. All right? And the range it goes from what? Negative infinity to what? Negative 5. Then union from 1 to infinity. Because remember, range deal with y's, domain deal with x's. Now, if you have any questions about 10.3 hyperbolas, make sure you send me a message through Microsoft Teams or you hit me up via email.